freedom and sobriety is huge. I think about that all the time, about how much freedom I have now that I don't feel like I need to be concerned about. So say like even here in Portland, when we've had events, like we just had weather events and people are kind of like stuck at home for a while. And in the past, it would be like, okay, I need to make sure that like they have enough beer, or I have enough wine, I have enough weed, to like get me through this time. And I'm like, no, I don't, I'm like freed up of having to think about that. My money is more free. My time is more free. My energy is more free, my attention. Yeah, it's been amazing.
What does it mean to live a meaningful inner and outer life? And how do our personal finances fit in that? We tackle those questions and others in the School of Financial Freedom podcast. We talk about the role of money in our personal growth and spiritual liberation, the concrete math of budgeting and saving and investing, and how all this relates to the life you were meant to lead. If you want to make financial and behavioral changes that give you more empowerment, integrity, and gratitude in the world, this is your show. I'm your host, Douglas Soy. In this episode, the School of Financial Freedom podcast, we're going to talk to Naomi, who she's going to tell us about lesson 2.9, which is the power of stories. Naomi is one of my favorite graduates because of her very special story. In this lesson, we're going to talk about contamination and redemption stories and how the narrative of how we see each other or see ourselves changes how we live our lives. Naomi's going to talk about spending money to impress others, all the while that she was homeless, and how sobriety and financial freedom gave her a new sense of self-concept, which has completely changed her life. Stay tuned for this special episode.
This is Naomi Veak, and you're listening to the School of Financial Freedom podcast.
Welcome, Naomi. It's nice to see you. It's been a few years.
Yes, it is so great to see your face, Douglas.
We're here with Naomi Veak today, and Naomi, you took financial freedom when?
I took it in fall of 2018.
Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you took financial freedom back then.
Back in the day, sure. So I live in Portland, Oregon. I've lived here for about 20 years. I am the founder of an in-person social community for badass sober women. I am also a professional coach for sober folks. I help them to reconnect with their true selves so that they can create the life that they want now that they're sober. And my sobriety has a lot to do with why I took financial freedom back in 2018. So I was newly sober. I'd been sober for a few months. I came to sobriety in May of 2018. And at that time, I was starting to explore this idea that I could maybe start changing some things about who I am. I mean, it's a really big shift. It was a really big shift for me to be removing alcohol and also removing weed. That was something that I had done for my whole adult life. And now that I didn't have those in my life, it was kind of like, okay, who am I? What am I doing? You also end up having a lot more time when you're sober, because it turns out that drinking and getting high take a lot of time out of your day. So it was actually our landlord mentioned to me that this course existed, and I don't know why. She just kind of suggested out of the, she didn't know anything about our financial, situation or anything, but we always paid our rent on time, but she was like, yeah, there's this course you might want to take. And I just thought, you know what? I have never taken a personal finance course. I'll just go ahead and try it.
Kind of brave for you to do.
Yes, I was doing a lot of brave things at the time. Like a lot of brave things. I mean, just starting out with sobriety, that in itself is very brave. But I didn't want to just be like sitting around at home feeling sorry for myself that I was sober. Well, I'd actually told myself that this was going to be a 1-year experiment with sobriety. So I had not committed to it. I was like, this is a 1-year experiment. I'm just going to see what happens. And that was my goal, was at the end of the year, I was like, I'm going to look around at my life and say, has my life gotten better? Is it worse? Is it the same? And then I would decide if I wanted to stay sober after that. So that's what I told myself going into it. And so I had kind of like flung myself into figuring out how to try and be a different person. Like, what can I make sobriety mean to me? So I had already taken that online uh, well-being course. There's this free well-being course through Yale University that's really popular now. I had taken that course, and that had made a really big difference for me. And so then when this one came along, I was like, I'm just going to do it.
So, financial freedom and sobriety are intimately connected for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it was actually pivotal, to be honest. It was like the lessons that I learned within the financial freedom course. The financial freedom course actually had played a very pivotal role in my sobriety journey because of the lessons that I learned in there. One of them specifically had to do with the way that I thought about my time, that my time it was something that should be important to me. That like it mattered. It was like the thing that should matter most in my life is like how I'm spending my time. I remember when I read that lesson, which I know that's not the one we're talking about today exactly, but when I read that lesson, I felt chills like all the way from the top of my head down my spine, where I just thought, but this is like an inner journey where I was like, if I'm the kind of person who values my time, like I can never go back to drinking or smoking pot ever again, because somebody who values their time doesn't do that. It was massive. And then also just the fact that this course was helping me to just realize that the way that most people or way that it seems like most people do things or think about the world, just because that's what it seems like most people are doing, that doesn't mean that it is the best way to be for me. So that almost like helped give me permission also to like, Naomi, if this is what is best for you, then like who cares what other people are doing? Who cares this like idea of judgment that I think they might be having about me, or even like my past self, it's like, what are you doing? Like that's not cool. Cool people drink. Cool people aren't sober.
Well, you bring up a couple interesting things here because, as you know, in the financial freedom community, principal idea behind it is that time and money are interchangeable, right? So, like when you spend money, you're actually just spending time. In fact, Dostoevsky said that money is just coined liberty. Liberty. So, when you are spending money, you're just spending your own liberty. And this idea of freedom and sobriety is really interesting to me. You want to say anything more about that?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, I just want to go back to what you were just saying about like that principle of financial freedom. That when I read that, it was saying like, okay, so as everybody knows, this is how I took it. As everybody knows, time is your most precious asset, and I was like, what? It is. So that to me was like, it was funny because it was like that was supposed to be a given. Of course, everybody knows that, and I was like, we do. I did not know that. So it's funny how, these lessons, these types of lessons in this type of a course it's so dense and there's so much to it that you never know what is going to strike people, in a certain way. And like nobody, who would have thought that I didn't realize that my time was valuable until I read that. But then it was like, okay, yeah, I need to like think that in order to do the rest of move on with like the basis of this whole course. But yeah, freedom and sobriety is huge. I think about that all the time, about how much freedom I have now that I don't feel like I need to be concerned about. So say like even here in Portland, when we've had events, like we just had weather events and people are kind of like stuck at home for a while. And in the past, it would be like, okay, I need to make sure that like they have enough beer, or I have enough wine, I have enough weed, to like get me through this time. And I'm like, no, I don't, I'm like freed up of having to think about that. My money is more free. My time is more free. My energy is more free, my attention. So yeah, it's been amazing. But I can talk more about the inner change and the outer change that I have gone through through the financial freedom course.
Amazing. All right. Well, why don't we start off with the lesson? You chose lesson 2.9, which is the power of stories. What's your narrative? Can you sort of review the lesson for someone who's never heard it before?
Sure. Yeah, the lesson has to do with the power of the story that we tell ourselves about our own lives. And it's interesting too, because this is a lot of, this is part of the work that I'm doing now with people also as a coach. If you think of yourself as somebody who has had terrible things happen to you and now you're just in that terrible place and that's it, that's like the end of the story, then you're not going to be taking action to move yourself out of that place. Like, this is who I am. This is what happened to me. This is where I am right now. And this is it. This is just who I am. To me, it's almost like the story just doesn't even go anywhere. But if instead you see your story as what they call a redemptive story, which is these things happened. I was, faced with these different challenges. And now I'm getting these new tools. I have allies who are coming in. I'm getting the help that I need. I am capable, and I am going to move out of this. And I am doing it. I can do it, and I am doing it. I am the kind of person who is now, I'm kind of gesturing in this circle, because it's this circle, coming around, coming back out of it. And for me, I felt so stuck. Even though I had been sober for a few months, I still felt very stuck in the way that I thought about money. I didn't see that ever changing. I had this whole thing that I had told myself about. So here's a little bit of my story. And I can kind of talk about the way that I saw it then, and then the way that it has changed. But I grew up in a small town in Wyoming. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness until I was about 16. That was when my whole family left the organization. In the Jehovah's Witness organization, there is a very high value put on feeling like you are separate from what they call the world, with a capital W. So separate from the financial institutions, separate from the political institutions. You're not supposed to care about anything that has to do with money. You're not supposed to care about anything that has been set up by man, basically, any of those structures. We're separate from that. All we care about is going door to door, trying to convert other people to become Jehovah's Witnesses, following all of the rules that they have set out for us for how we're supposed to think, how we're supposed to act. And then you just wait until Armageddon comes, when God will destroy all the evildoers. And then we're going to make the earth into a paradise where we live forever. That was how I grew up. So, we lived very, very simply. But to me at the time, looking back, this is the way I thought about myself, was that, we're poor. I was we grew up so poor. I never got any new clothes. I always had hand-me-downs. My parents were not able to set me up for financial success. I had to borrow a ton of money to go to school, because I ended up going to a very expensive college, where I walked in there as here I am from a small town in Wyoming, from a family that doesn't have any money. And I'm surrounded by all of these people that were my fellow students were from California, from the Silicon Valley, and they had their parents' credit cards and they had cars and all of this. And I walked in and it was there's the table set up with the little credit card application. I was oh, phew. Okay, well, at least I can do this. And so then I can have money to go out to eat with people, when they're doing that, because I was there on scholarships, loans, and grants, I did not have any extra money, but I had a credit card. So I ended up, there was a family tragedy that happened my junior year. My dad actually committed suicide my junior year of college. And I went into this really big depression my senior year. So I did not graduate. So then I like left college with no degree, huge student loans, major depression. I had then started my weed addiction because that's the only thing I knew to deal with. And so the way that I saw myself, so here I am, I'm in my early 40s, starting sobriety. And I was just looking back at my life and I was like, oh man, like how terrible, just I'd failed at everything. I felt like I'd failed at everything. I did not understand anything that had to do with money. I had this huge student loan still because then I had ended up going back to school for like more undergraduate, finished that, got a graduate degree. So I got a master's degree and started teaching. The only thing that I knew how to do was just to spend the money that came in. That's all I ever did. And I would go to the finance talks at work, and they have the person that comes in and is like explaining about your options. And it's like, I have no idea what this person is saying. I don't know what any of this stuff means. And I can't. Like, it's just another language. I don't get it. Everybody else gets it. I have no plans for the future. I am going to be paying my student loans till I'm 80 years old. And I felt very insecure and very inferior because of all these beliefs that I had about myself. And yeah, I really was just, my thought was, I'm just doomed to be hopeless with money. Like, that's just it. I remember when I ended up working at this ski resort for a few years after I had not graduated from college. And one of the bartenders there told me, we had worked together for, I think, like three seasons. And after the third season, he was like, well, I just bought a house in he's like, I just bought a hardware store in Hood River. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I've been saving all my tips. And, I just bought a hardware store. And I was like, what are you talking? You saved your tips? And I remember I had been judging him so much because I was just like, man, he just wears like the same 4 shirts, the same few pairs of pants. Like, he's using his old ski gear. He's not getting new gear every year like I am. He's not like buying everybody drinks like I am. And yeah, and I was like, how do you know how to do that? But then see what I told myself, because he said, well, my parents talked to me something. And I was like, oh yeah, oh, of course, your parents helped you. That's how, well, my parents couldn't help me. So of course you could do it and I couldn't do it.
There's this element of victimhood in a contamination story, right? Like everything was fine and then bad things happened and
right.
The world did things to me. There's a lack of agency. And given everything you said, it would feel like, it'd feel like a natural response of feeling like an external locus of control.
Yes, that's exactly it. The personal agency. I did not feel like I had that.
Interesting.
So,
other things that you mentioned in this beginning of the story is like, when you went to college, you were just granted a credit card, right? Like, you didn't even know really what a credit card was, but it enabled you to keep up with everyone else, the social circle. Mm-hmm. How dangerous is that, man?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't even really, it's like I barely even had to face the reality of where I was. I mean, I talked to other people later, years later after I took financial freedom, and I was speaking openly about things, just being more honest about my past, because I had hidden all of that I didn't even let anybody know that I hadn't graduated. I pretended like I'd graduated. But one of my classmates from back then, when I had shared my story on Facebook, and she said, yeah, I felt that same way about being around all of the rich kids. She's like, but I was working a full-time job, at the same, or probably a part-time job at the same time. I did not face the reality of where I was, that like, yeah, I actually probably should have had and could have had, a job, but whatever, woulda, shoulda, coulda. No, I couldn't have because I didn't know at the time.
It's interesting because on some level in consumerism, no one's actually telling the truth about themselves, right? Like mm-hmm. we're presenting ourselves in a way, a social self that we want other people to see. And capitalism does a really wonderful job of doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that, like what I was talking about at the ski resort, that first um, summer. So I worked at this ski resort for a year, waiting tables. And then that summer, the boyfriend that I had met, he became my first husband, but that I had met there, he and I were homeless for a while, living in his truck that summer because I spent all my tips, everything I had. And I actually had been homeless before I went up to the ski resort. So seems like I don't know. I just like, that's just what I did. So I was homeless before I went up to the ski resort. It included room and board. And so I was like, everything was great. I had food, I had a place to sleep. Had all this cash coming in that I would put in a box under my bed and then I would just spend it all. And then so he and we lived in his truck. We spent all the money that I had, the little bit that I had saved up. And then we got down to like nothing. And I remember, I mean, we literally got down to change where, and he got a job before I did at a restaurant, and he had to like steal a sandwich one day to bring it home for me to eat because we had literally no food. And it was miserable. It was pouring down rain on the Oregon coast. We're in this tiny little truck. You know, we're not in one of these like things that you see on social media, these like amazing vans that are all tricked out. We were it was not fun at all. And was getting off of my depression medication cold turkey. Okay, so what happens is that, I wait tables that summer. We got into an apartment, just didn't have any furniture, but we had a roof over our head. And I take my tips and I buy all of the best sporting equipment that I can so that then when I go back to the ski resort and I'm like back with all those people again, I show up with like all this new gear and all this, I basically spent all of my money on the brand new best snowboarding gear.
Yeah, one of the things that I always say is personal finance is your relationship to the future. I'm just curious, especially with your dad dying at the time, like what was your relationship with the future?
I did not think about it. And I think that also came from growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. I did not think that I needed to think about the future. It's like God's going to take care of it. Yeah, I never thought about it. And yeah, so that's where I was when I took the course. It's like at this point I actually had a good job at that point. My husband had a good job, but we still were it was money in, money out. We had no emergency fund. He had brought up a couple times about like, maybe we could buy a house someday. And I'm like, no way. Cause I didn't see myself as being responsible enough to ever have a house. I was like, no, I'm just renting for life. Like this is all I can handle. And what happened from taking the course is that, first of all, this interchange happened where for the first time in my life, I had hope because I saw myself as somebody who could change, like the fact that change was even possible. And I know people can do amazing things when they have hope. I mean, we've seen all of those like adventure films where, it seems like somebody, like they could have died. They very easily could have died. It seems like they should have died, but they had that like little bit of hope, that they're just like, and they make it through. And so I had that hope and I started thinking, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can figure this out because the course itself, the way that it like led me through step by step, just first of all, even realizing, like, what is my money script? Why are you maybe acting like that? Why have you been like this? And like, did you know it can change? There's like a different way of being, and this hope. And then it finally gets into like the practical steps. And so I'm like doing the practical steps, and I was like, wow, okay. So maybe I'm not such a dummy when it comes to this. Because of course I wasn't. Like I'm a very intelligent person and I was successful in all different kinds of areas of my life. Definitely not this one. But I was like, I think I can figure this out. Like there are resources available. Now the way that I see myself as someone who knows how to make forward thinking financial decisions. I'm not just doing whatever it feels like I want to do, like at the moment. Like I actually feel like I'm the kind of person, like I am a person who takes personal responsibility. And like because of those changes and like it's changing inwardly. But then at the same time, because I was taking steps outwardly and just like, okay, I'm just going to do this, like even looking at where am I actually, like what is going on with my finances and just starting to make these changes and then starting to see things shift. There was like this excitement that started building up from the way that I could see things changing. And so we ended up, we did pay off. My husband still had student loans too. We were both in our 40s. So we paid off his student loans. I've paid off my student loans. We started saving an emergency fund. We started working on a down payment for a house and then looking at things like even like, his stocks and stuff. And like, let's figure out how all of this stuff works. And so then we bought a house in spring of 2020. And we love this house. And also, we would not have been able to buy this house, which is 860 square feet, if we hadn't gone through this mindset shift of realizing what was important to us, what mattered to us. Like I decluttered tons of stuff. We lived in a much bigger rental home before this. It was twice the size of this. But this idea of like voluntary simplicity, I'm just like, look at me, look at all the changes I'm making. Like this is 100% a redemptive story that I am living right now. I'm just like, look at where I was and look at where I am right now. I was laid off from my job at a tech company in summer of 2020, and I did not panic because we had our spreadsheet. Like I knew what the amounts of money were that we needed to live on, and we knew that we could live just on my husband's salary, which we did for the last few years while I've been focusing on my own personal and professional transformation with the sober social community and becoming a coach. And now the things have started changing where I'm starting to bring in a little bit more income. And like, we know our plan is that we're going to be continuing to live on just his income and investing everything that I make. This is not money for us to live on. Well, it's for us to live on in the future. So
amazing, Naomi. What occurs to me is this critical point in your story where you found hope, right? Like, any redemption story, like there's no redemption story where like you get saved from the outside, right? A redemption story happens when you find hope within yourself and you're able to do something internally that changes you internally, changes your identity. And I think so many people in America don't feel a sense of hope, right? They don't have a sense of redemption is possible. And it seems to me like this was always available to you as long as you were able to go inside.
Yeah. The understanding that we can change the way that we are, or for me, like understanding that I can change the way that I am as a person, and having hope for that has been what has helped me to keep going and what has driven what I'm doing. And having the confidence that, because, sometimes it can feel scary of like, well, but if I change, like, then what? What's that going to be like? Like, I'm not going to be able to handle that, like whatever that life is. But now that I've started making all of these changes, I know that any change that I'm making, especially all of these that are for growth, it's a positive change that I'm making. Like it's always going to work out. Yeah, there's going to be some discomfort there, but every single one of these inner changes that I'm making, and I'm making them all the time, like it just is bringing more and more and more freedom.
Yeah, it occurs to me that you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the fact that so right now, what I am doing, I am creating something that does not exist anywhere else. Like the social community that I started and the way that I have created this and the way that I'm running it, like it does not exist anywhere else. I've created something completely new. And even, what I'm doing with my coaching, like all of this is nobody else is doing this. And I would never have thought it possible that I would be able to just turn into somebody who has the confidence to do that. but it was also part of, I'm like, when I was looking at that, I'm looking at my own story and thinking about like, okay, so I've made this shift, I've found hope. I've realized that I can do this. It's not going to be easy, but I can do it. And people are going to be coming along that are going to be helping me along the way with just like giving me ideas and tools and all of this. That it was like, okay, what do I want to happen after this? Well, like, am I the training manager at a technology company? Like, do I want to work my way up in a company like that? Well, some people do. And I probably could have decided to focus on that, but instead having this like freedom of thinking, I want to do the thing that like really, really lights me up. And that is what I am doing right now. And I feel confident that I am going to be able to like bring in enough income from it that it's going to support like my and my husband's, future life together. And that I'm going to want to keep doing this too. Like I love what I'm doing so much that I know I'm going to want to keep doing it. I'm not thinking like, oh God, I can't wait until I retire so I can start life. But like, I'm so excited. I'm not too old. That was the other thing had been telling myself, it's too late. You're too old. And I'm like, no, I am not too old. Like I have so much more wisdom now. I'm almost 50 and it's like, this is exactly when I'm supposed to be doing something like this.
It seems like the combination of sobriety and financial freedom allowed you to step into the particulars of your own life.
I would say that's definitely true. And we had talked about like a few months after I had taken the course that I was just like, oh my gosh, I really want other sober people to have access to this course because I just know how empowering it was for me. Just incredibly, incredibly empowering. And like you said, people do not talk about money. I know that there are a lot of people that are putting up that front, like this is what they're showing the world, but on the inside, they're feeling that same kind of like insecurity and like inferiority that I did. And a change like this can just like ripple out into so many other parts of your life.
One of the things you mentioned before is the judgment of others, but there's also the judgment of yourself, right? Thinking about like you have to let go of who you are to become what you could be. How did you make that step of like letting go of, oh, this is who I am and this is what I value towards like, I can be something different?
Yeah, that is what everybody's trying to figure out, it seems like. And it was, oh man, yeah, what is it exactly that allowed me? I mean, I think a lot of it was at the beginning, it was spurred by curiosity. I just had I was and I had to kind of tell myself that because otherwise it's so scary. If you think about the depth of change, how much that impacts, like all the different levels of your life, of your identity. And for me, that was very frightening to face. And so instead I was like, you know what? I'm not going to pay attention to this. I'm just going to be led by my curiosity right now. And that is what is going to be like my entry point into this. But then, like I said, if you start with the curiosity of like, I wonder if this is possible, or I wonder what is possible. And if you like starting there, then once you get into it and then you start seeing changes happening, that's when, for me, it was like, that's when the hope really blossomed. Because before I had this, like, I called it optimistic anticipation, or is like something, well, I guess that is hope, actually. Optimistic anticipation is hope. I think I was trying to tell myself that I had hope before I really had it. But then it was taking this course was where I feel like hope like truly came into being.
Yes. And there are a lot of people, well, in life and in people who take financial freedom, right? Like everyone takes a course or goes to like a workshop in Bali or something like that and say, oh, I'm transformed, right? And they come back and they just do the same thing that they did afterwards. There is some added element here that is remarkable about you, Naomi. You were able to take that feeling of hope and convert it into action. And that action became evidence that your hope was right.
Yeah. So you're wondering, like, where did that Where did that come from? How can other people find that if they're not finding it within themselves? Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, like, tons of people want transformation, but not everyone's able to do it.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's another part of it is that so once again, so I going back to like looking back at the story and rewriting the story. I had not really looked at the grief that I had for when my father died. Like I hadn't thought about it. And that was one of the things. I had a lot of unprocessed grief. And I went back and I looked at that and I thought about like, yeah, that's really sad. Because like my dad had just like very briefly is that he was the one that had made it possible for all of us to leave the organization, when I was 15, almost 16, because he decided he was going to. He was like, I'm leaving. You can all leave. I'm not going to tell you why. Well, then he quit his job. He went to college. He came out as gay. My parents got divorced and then he came out as gay. And he was he was doing so awesome in school and was so excited about what he was doing. He was on his way. He wanted to become an English teacher. And, he was writing and he was doing all this stuff. But he also got into an abusive relationship. And this guy had a really big problem with alcohol. And that's, what kind of led to my dad ending up killing himself was he didn't see a way out of just the emotion torment that he was feeling with this man. And I was able to like look back at that. And instead of being like, wow, that is like so sad, because it is so sad. But I turned it into like, F that. Like that is not going to be me. And also like that, well, yeah, like that is not going to be me. And then I immediately wanted to start helping other people too, because I was like, and I don't want that to be other people either. It's like also just like turning it around into an act of service. It's like, how can I be of help in this world?
Well, it's interesting because what you're talking, there are a couple of things. Like it sounds like, your drinking and your weed is intimately connected with your dad dying.
Mm-hmm.
And you quitting and you taking control of your life, including your financial life, is a sense of intergenerational healing. It's an intergenerational redemption story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could have easily been an intergenerational contamination story. It could have been like, this happened to my dad and then I descended into this, right? And you've made it into an intergenerational healing story and a redemption story. Tell us about the work you want to do with other people.
Yes, I would love to do that. Actually, do you mind if I mention one more thing about something the letter that I found? Okay, so how I had told myself, like back when I talked to that bartender and he was like, yeah, I bought this shop and the reason why I knew how to do it was because my parents. And I was like, oh, my parents never helped me. They were never able to give me financial advice. Well, I had found this letter that my mom had written to me in college, and she did actually give me financial advice. I just didn't listen to it. So I did have a parent, and I had parents who taught us how to live very simply, very frugally, but like we always had food. Everything was in good repair. We lived a simple life, but like we had everything that we needed. And when I look back at this letter that she wrote, like one of the things that I can read, yeah, I'll read just a little portion of it here because these are the 4 gems that I pulled out of it. That was like the things that I was like mean so much to me now. She said, Naomi, don't let yourself lose ground financially. Work with the system. It's not going to change just because you want it to. The sooner you learn that happiness is not derived from material possessions, but other values, the happier you will be. How often do you think about all you have to be grateful for? Learning a new value system may be one of the most valuable lessons you learn in your college years. Didn't turn out that way, but don't expect your thinking to change overnight. Give yourself time to feel the inward peace of mind that will eventually come. Eventually, you will adapt and will be happier for it. And then the happiest people make money work for them. Remember, money is for protection. Don't let material possessions control your life. You're extremely intelligent and have a determined nature when you think something is important. Use these assets to gain control.
What love and wisdom.
Yeah. I did have a mom who was giving me amazing advice.
It was
And
always
she
there.
still does. It was always there. Yeah. And it's there for me now. Yeah, this is kind of like making me tear up right now because she obviously cared so much about me and about my future.
It has been painful for her to watch what happened in your 20s.
Yeah, she didn't really know. She was going through her own pain. So, yeah, we kind of, everybody in my brother and my sister and my mom, we all just kind of dispersed to our own pain caves at that time. So, but it's a redemption story for my family as well, because the rest, like all of us, have come back together. We have all, it's really incredible. We all have had our own redemption stories. Like we're all on the upswing. We all have gone into the depths and then have made changes and have come back out. And yeah, it's incredible.
And now you want to help people with their own redemption stories.
Yes. And I am doing that. In the social community that I have, it is, it's based on these values of authenticity, well-being, belonging, and growth. And I do a lot of work with people, like just helping them to really be able to understand and love all the different parts of themselves, because like I had so much, I guess, self-loathing, and it's really hard to make positive change from a place of like fear and hate, and be able to start from this place of like, yeah, love and acceptance. And also hope. I mean, there are so many women that have told me that they thought that when they got sober, that they were like, my life is going to be boring. It's going to be lonely. This is terrible. And then they join the community, and the different types of events that I offer in the community that I'm creating there, they find something that they have not found before, that they were looking for, which is a place where, everyone there is like on their own journey of healing and coming to more wholeness. So I do that it's called My Sober Girlfriends. Yep, here in Portland. And so we do that in the community. And then I also, do one-on-one coaching with people that are ready to like really go there with like, let's create this life that I got sober for.
What I find super powerful is what you're saying is that before you can do anything in your own life, you have to meet the things that most pained you.
Yes. And that was, to me, that was a huge, like this course, it played such a significant role in my journey. And part of it really is the way that you've designed it to like lead us through that, where you have us, it's hard. It is really hard to have those realizations, but then it's also a sense of relief, because it's like, okay, I'm not hiding that from myself anymore. Like, it's here, I can see it. And now I can do something about it.
Yeah, there's the Gospel of Thomas that says, if you do not bring forth what is within you, it will destroy you. If you bring out what is within you, it will save you. And it sounds like this is the story that's going to save you.
Yeah, I'm doing this all the time with myself, like constantly noticing more of what is in there that I'm not paying attention to, that I'm not turning towards. It is so important to turn towards those things that we think we're somehow hiding from them, but they are there and having a huge impact on the way that we're showing up in the world.
It's interesting because when I hear you talk, I sense a greater intimacy with yourself in a way that I bet drinking and smoking weed, you were just voiding yourself. You're both voiding yourself and avoiding yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that when people come to work with me, especially one-on-one, I say one-on-one, that's what they want, is they want to get to know themselves. Like, that's what they come in saying, like, I want to know my true self. I want to understand myself. I want to get closer to who was that person that I left behind, so long ago. So yeah, that is like, that's the real work. And just for me, having the financial piece as being part of it. I mean, as you talk about in there, it just has such a huge impact. I mean, just like sobriety does, like sobriety impacts like touches every part of your life, and finances do too. They touch every single part of your life. And so for somebody to think that they can, like a lot of people that are doing like this sort of this spiritual kind of work, this personal development work, like to me, it really has to include finances, like it feels different, but it's actually the same.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that financial freedom is really just a path to personal and spiritual growth, because how could you not grow spiritually and personally if you take on this path? Anything else you want to say about My Sober Girlfriends or your coaching practice?
No, I just say, if you want to connect with me, you can just look for me on Instagram, like my personal account, Naomi Veak. That's where I'm going to be posting like coaching content on there. But I'm also, My Sober Girlfriends is also on Instagram. So you can follow us there, especially if you're in Portland. And I don't know, maybe it's something that will grow into being in other places outside of Portland. So you never know, but follow us.
Where are you in your personal finance journey now? Where are your learning edges?
Ooh, yeah. Let's see. So right at this moment, I'll say so my husband and I have shared one car for about 12 years. And, which is pretty rare in the United States. We just now, because of me working from home and he now has to go out to the office more days a week. He used to be able to work from home more, of course, because of the pandemic and all of that. And we're starting to see the need for having a second car. And this is feeling like a huge change because I'm used to thinking of us as a one car house. And so having to figure all this stuff out and then also the car that we have right now, we just found out it needs some major repairs. So it's like having to figure things out with car, like we also know that we have this house, we have, house repairs and things. And so it's just interesting having these different priorities to figure out how to kind of balance out thinking about what we're doing in the short term versus, money that's like working for us in the long term. And then the second thing is that I really felt like, and I still feel this way, is that I want to have an exact idea of when my income is coming in from coaching and from whatever else I end up doing. I want to know exactly where it is going. And I don't have that place yet. We haven't had to do anything that's outside of work that has to do with investments. It's been all kind of like through his work or through my work. And now it's like, okay, this feels like this is a new thing that I'm like, okay, this is my income that will be coming in. I want to know exactly where it's going and I want it to just go right in there. So,
well, you should listen to Whitney's episode on budgeting tools. I'll give you tons of tools and ideas for that. We're nearing the end of the episode. And what would be your pitch for financial freedom to someone?
Okay. I would say if the idea of taking a course like this scares you, that is exactly why you need to sign up. Like just do it. Get curious. Like I said, start with the curiosity. Like you don't have to say, okay, I'm going to take this course and it's going to change my life, but just get curious about what might be possible for you.
Amazing. Naomi, it was a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you so much, Douglas. I love connecting with you in any way. I love your writing, your emails. It's such a great reminder to like keep having you talking about these concepts again and again, because we're surrounded by a world that does not think this way.
And I'm just super gratified to still be in touch with you because it's really wonderful to see where you are. What, 5-6 years later? How many years?
Yeah, it's been about 5 years later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just, change happens incrementally. And, if you lose hope early on, nothing ever gets done. But you've been able to do something consistently for 5-6 years. So I'm super grateful to be in touch with you still. Thank you, Naomi.
Yeah. Thanks, Douglas.
Thank you for tuning in to the School of Financial Freedom podcast, where we ask, what does it mean to live a meaningful inner and outer life? And how do our personal finances fit into that? We hope you enjoyed this episode and it helps you live with an increasing sense of empowerment, integrity, and agency in the world. For more information, resources, and to re-listen to this or any past episodes, visit our website at schooloffinancialfreedom.com. There you can find out when the next cohort of Financial Freedom 1, the online course is. If you've enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving us a review, as it helps more people find us and join our community of people interested in the intersection of money and personal and spiritual growth. I'm Douglas Soy, founder of the School of Financial Freedom. You can also find me on Substack, where you can subscribe to my popular newsletter, Money and Meaning. I also love hearing from readers and listeners, so write me at www.douglassoy.com. I'm grateful that you listened, and I hope that this episode has given you hope and insight into taking control of your finances to live the life you want.